welcome to another episode. I am your host, WIZE, and this interview I'm really looking forward to. My next guest is a transformational coach, author, uh, healer, and teacher. Welcome to the show, Lion Goodman.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here with you.
Oh man, the pleasure is all mine. I'm really excited. You have an amazing story, and I really want people to hear it. So, at the age of 26, something happened to you that I want you to tell us. Let my audience know what happened.
Sure, we'll dive right in. So I was 26 and I was a little bit lost. I had graduated with a degree in consciousness studies from the University of Colorado. And as far as I know, it was the first degree granted in that field. I made it up at the time. This is 1975, which will let you know how old I am. But nobody was hiring people with degrees in consciousness studies because there never had been one before. So I couldn't find a job. So I took a job selling jewelry and gift items, just something to do. So I was on the road trying to figure out what I was to do next, and making money and getting to see the Southwest U.S. So I was traveling around, going to store and selling this line of jewelry. And whenever I was on the road, because I had studied consciousness and philosophy and psychology and spirituality and religions, I was a nice guy. I was kind of a nice hippie salesman. And so I would stop and help people along the road because that was just my ethics, stop and help people if you can. And so I had been on the road for about a year and a half, and I was driving an RV van, and I wasn't really happy with my life, but I was having a good enough time. I'm making enough money to keep going. But I didn't know what to do next. I thought maybe I'd go back to school and become a doctor or a psychologist, but that didn't seem right. I really wasn't ready for it. I was 26 and still sowing my oats. And I was on my way from Las Vegas to LA. And as I was driving through the Mojave Desert, there was a guy whose car had broken down in the middle of the desert. It was about 110 degrees out. And so I stopped and I said, can I do anything for you? And he said, I just put $200 into this car and now it's dead and I don't know what to do. And I said, well, I'm heading into LA. Do you want to ride? And he looked at me kind of funny and he went, yeah, okay. And he took all of his belongings out of his car and brought them into my van. And there were duffel bags and a suitcase and some boxes and stuff. And so we started traveling together, and I was planning on letting him out, but I wasn't quite in LA yet. So he traveled with me for 3 days. And during that time, I grew to trust him. I'd send him on errands with a van, wash it up and get it gassed up. And I'd buy him food because he didn't have any money. And I was just being a nice guy and taking him under my wing for a few days. And the third night, we were camped out near Claremont, California, out in the middle of nowhere. And I was in the back of the van, is crouched down between these cabinets, moving stuff around because it was very crowded in that van with my stuff and his stuff. And he was in the front of the van listening to music. And suddenly this shot rang out. This explosion happened and something hit me in the head. And at first I thought the stove had exploded because it was right above me. And I looked up and the stove was intact. And then I looked to my left and I saw him sitting on the back seat with a gun pointed at my head from the front seat with his arm propped up. And I realized he had shot me, and I was quite surprised, shocked, and I think the first thing I said is, "Are you shooting at me?" And then he shot again. And my first thought was that he was warning me that he was going to take my stuff and leave me out in the desert, naked. And that would have been fine with me. I would have been okay with that scenario. But when he shot again, I realized, no, he's going to kill me. And I was in a crouched position, completely blocked in. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't defend myself. I couldn't run. I couldn't stand up. Like I was a sitting duck, basically. And so I said, okay, well, if I'm going to die, I don't want to die angry or upset. I want to die with peace in my heart, because I had also studied death and dying. And so I knew that you had a choice how you're going to die. So I said, okay, well, if this is my time, this is my time. And I began to pray and reach up to source and connect with the light that I was about to merge with. I said, okay, I'm coming home. It's like a big surprise. I didn't think it was going to. Why I was so confused so much of the time, because I was going to be dead, and that it didn't matter what I decided to do. So I was I went through my past very quickly, and I forgave everyone that had ever hurt me. I asked forgiveness from anyone that I had hurt. And then I was sort of out of my body and merged out into the light. And he shot a third time. And the second and third bullets both missed me by fractions of an inch. And by this time, I'm looking down at the van and sort of seeing this little model of two little people inside a little van playing out this drama. I thought that was kind of amusing at that moment. It's like, oh, look how silly humans are. And I was streaming with this golden love light. And then he shot a fourth time. And suddenly I was back in my body. My head had been pushed violently to the side. Blood was dripping down off my head and into my chest and my arms. And I was surprised because I was back in my body. And I thought I was supposed to be out of my body by this time. And so I was kind of checking myself. And I had studied anatomy and physiology and dance and mime. And so I was very aware of my body. And I was kind of checking around to see what was missing. Because if the bullet had gone through me, then I would be missing something. But nothing seemed to be missing. That's all I could figure out. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to die, I at least want to look my assassin in the eyes, because I was perpendicular to him. And so I picked up my head and I turned and I looked at him to my left, and he freaked out. And he jumped up and he said, "Why aren't you dead, man? You're supposed to be dead." And I didn't have an answer for that question. So I just said, "Here I am." And he said, "That's too weird, man. It's too weird. It's just like my dream." And I said, "What dream?" And he said, "This morning I was dreaming. I was shooting at this guy and he wouldn't die, but it wasn't you. It was somebody else in the dream." And at this point, I thought, okay, this is weird. This is very weird. I don't know how I got here. I don't know. I don't remember signing the contract for the movie that was being shot. It's like, how much am I getting paid for this role? It was like, it's completely bizarre. But I thought, okay, if maybe I can keep him talking and he won't shoot me again. So I began to talk very slowly, trying to get him to calm down, because he was all adrenalated, jumping around, looking out windows and stuff. And he kept saying, "Why aren't you dead? I shot you 4 times, man. Why aren't you dead?" And I said, "Well, maybe I'm not supposed to die." He said, "Yeah, but I shot you. And he was, I just tried to speak to him in a very slow, calm voice. And I was still in this light. I was still in the love light. So it wasn't a problem. It was just how I was being at that moment. And at one point he came over and he looked at my head and he said, "Does it hurt?" And at that moment I realized, oh, he's gone from wanting to kill me to caring about me. He actually cares whether it hurts or not. And so I said, "Yeah, but I think I'm going to be okay." And then after a few more exchanges of, "I shot you. Why did you have to be so nice to me, man? Why I shot you 4 times. Why aren't you dead?" After more of that, he said, "Okay, man, I'm going to take you to a hospital that I know." And I said, "Okay." Well, that sounded like a good idea to me at the time. So he gets in the front of the van and he turns it on the engine and he starts driving. He put some stuff around me so I couldn't jump him, but like I was in no position to jump him at that moment. So he's driving, excuse me. And I was out of time. I have no idea how much time went by. I think it was somewhere between a half an hour and an hour he was driving on the road. And I had time to just contemplate, like, what the hell is going on here? It's like I was very confused, but at the same time I was thinking clearly. I was just in this expanded spiritual state, and just thinking how strange this whole thing was. And finally he pulled over and he stopped the van and he turned off the engine, and it was quiet and dark. And I realized we're not at a hospital. There's no bright lights. And after a few minutes, he walked toward me and sat down right next to me with a gun in his hand. He said, I can't take you to the hospital, man. I have to kill you. And I said, oh, why is that? I find being curious is really helpful. Like, really, why is that the truth? And he said, because if I take you to the hospital, they'll put me back in jail. I can't go back to jail, man. And I suddenly realized, okay, not only is this a crazy person with a gun, it's a crazy ex-con with a gun. So like it made the issue bigger suddenly. And I said, well, maybe you could just let me off at the hospital. And he said, no, man, they'd find me and I can't go back to jail. I have to kill you. And so my goal was just to keep opening possibilities. And so I kept making suggestions and he'd reject them. And this began an 8-hour conversation. And we were, it was both trying to figure out how to get out of this situation and because it was clear that he didn't want to kill me now. He kept asking me, why were you so nice to me? Why were you so nice to me? And I said, because you're a person and I'm a person. And at one point I said, I'm really cramped in this position. I've been in that position for hours and I'd like to get out and stretch. And he said, okay, well, don't try anything funny. And I said, no, I'm not going to try anything funny. He still had the gun, and I didn't know what condition I was in, although I felt invincible in some way. So I got out of the van, and he kind of pointed down this hill to a pond of water. And so I started walking down the pond, and he was behind me. And I thought, well, he could shoot me in the back and push me into the water. That's a possibility. But I did feel the sense of invincibility. It's like, I was already past danger. I was in the light and I was in grace in some way. And so I bent down and I washed off the blood from my face and my hands, but it stopped bleeding by this time. But I still couldn't figure out how far the bullet had gone in because it was all matted blood up here. But I felt okay. So I stood up and faced him. And at this point, he looked at me kind of strangely and he held out his gun and he said, what would you do if I handed you this gun? And I said, I'd throw it out into the water over there. And he said, you wouldn't try to shoot me? You wouldn't kill me? I said, no, why would I do that? You've got your life. I've got mine. We're okay. And then he looked at me with a strange look in his face. And he said, man, you are the weirdest person I've ever met. And I thought, yeah, I'm probably the weirdest person you'll ever meet, because he was inside this love light that I was part of, I didn't have any enmity, no anger. It's like, hey, we're both survivors, So we walked back into the van and started talking, and I kept asking him questions about his life. How did he get into this situation? Why did he decide to do this? When did he decide to do this? It turns out that he had planned it while his car had broken down, that whoever stopped and helped him, he was going to kill and take their stuff and escape. And I had volunteered. So I was the volunteer for his little plan. And I also found out of his background, growing up in poverty, not having an alcoholic father who beat him and a mother who didn't help, and getting called dumb in school. And he finally left school and went to the army, and then the army rejected him. He actually ran away from the army. He went AWOL because he didn't like the discipline. And then he got involved in drug dealing and stole money from his drug dealers. And so this whole thing, sort of his whole story unwound. And I was listening and asking him more questions. And, at some point I realized that, his life had led him to this incident of him being the killer. And my life had led to this incident being the victim. But it was really a dance. It wasn't like, I didn't feel like a victim. I just felt like I was in this dance with this guy, and that we were dancing some cosmic dance. I don't know how else to explain it. And that we just needed to find the resolution. And so we ended up talking for hours more, trying to figure out how to let each other go, because he didn't want to kill me. I didn't want to die. And he didn't want to go back to jail. So we're sorting through all those facts, and eventually we came to an agreement. And the agreement was that I would not turn him in and that he would never do anything like that again. And so we shook on it. It was basically the best deal we could come up with. And so he drove to a place that he knew. He took out all of his stuff from my van. We shook hands again. People were looking at me strange because I was like covered with blood and stuff down my shirt. But I got back in the van and I drove myself to the hospital. And the emergency room doc was sewing up my scalp, and he asked me what happened, and I told him. He said, well, you have to file a police report. I said, yeah, I know. And he said, you're a lucky man. 2 bullets bounced off your skull. And I thought, well, luck's got nothing to do with it. I'm blessed. I'm a blessed man. This was as much a blessing as anything, the fact that I survived. And that really set me on my path for going even deeper into what is consciousness? Who are we as people? What are we here for? What is the world made of? Why do people like him get into his position and me get into my position? And I realized it all has to do with the beliefs that we form in childhood and then in adulthood, that's what drives us to behave, no matter how we're behaving. So one person, another person completely different, but their beliefs drive them to be who they are and how they are in life. So that's my life's work, is working with beliefs, belief change, and transforming people and healing from the past so we can create a new future.
So I know you had to report the incident. Did the police, did you identify him, or?
I had promised to not turn him in, and I did not file a police report.
Okay. Wow. You're a better man than me. I you are blessed. If they could have gone in and really done some serious damage, and by them just bouncing off, man, it's crazy. That's and like I said, you're a better man than me, because I would have turned them in. I'm sorry, but so I know you. So could you explain the clear belief method and how it facilitates and rapid and deep healing in your clients?
Sure.
That's the program you have, right?
It is. It is. Well, I'll tell you what happened next, because that's
Okay.
kind of interesting. So it took me a couple of weeks to kind of come back into myself. I was very expanded and like confused, and I had a friend helping me for a couple of weeks, and then I thought, okay, well, I'm healed. I'm fine. I need to get a job. I did not want to be on the road anymore, selling shit to as I called it, selling shit to idiots, but that's something else. But I wanted a real job, where I would sit at a desk every day and not be threatened by guns.
Yeah.
And so I got a job as a executive recruiter, which is called a headhunter. So it's kind of ironic. After having my head hunted, I became a headhunter. So some irony in there. And that was my career for 25 years. I was helping companies find people for jobs, and I was quite good at it. Part of the reason why I was good is because I was very aware and very sensitive, and my consciousness was expanded. So I could tell this person will fit this job in this company really well. So I eventually built my own business and had employees and did that until the dot bomb happened in around when was it? Around 2000. It was around 2000 when all the dot-com companies kind of collapsed. And that was most of my business. So all my business went away. And I thought, well, now what do I do? And at that point, someone introduced me to coaching, and I went, "Oh yeah, that sounds great." And I became a coach. And then I realized that the technology that I had would serve other people. So then I started teaching this methodology I have for rapid transformation healing. And I've taught now over 600 people around the world this technology. So it's based on this idea that beliefs are the infrastructure of the human mind. You're stuck in my mind podcast. Your podcast is perfect for this for this description, because we are stuck in our beliefs. The beliefs are what make up our mind, and beliefs are simply conclusions that we came to in depending on the circumstances. They were either indoctrinated into us by our parents or teachers or religious leaders, or we came to the conclusions ourselves. And this is how we began building our mind, building our personality, who we actually are. What do I believe about myself? What do I believe about others? And what do I believe about the world? Those are the three big categories that we form our relationship to ourselves, to others, and to the world. And that's the basis upon which we operate. So it's the infrastructure, it's the hidden pipes underneath the ground that make it all work. And so what I discovered is that those beliefs can be changed no matter when they were formed or where they came from. They can be changed quite rapidly and permanently. There's a lot of belief change techniques out there that are partial or temporary. The technique I developed over 40 years of study and practice is permanent and rapid. So that's what we do. A person can come to us, to myself and my coaches, with any problem, a relationship problem, a problem with finances, a problem with a marriage, a problem with kids, a problem with just being in the world or reacting to someone else. They're all based on the beliefs at that infrastructure level. And so we go right down through the subconscious mind to the core where beliefs are stored, and we basically extract or deprogram the old beliefs and put in a new, better, much more effective and efficient belief. And that process changes people's lives because we look through our belief system. They're kind of like goggles that we look through, different colors. And so if you change from dark green sunglasses to yellow sunglasses, the world looks different. And if you change your belief from life is hard to life is joy, you're looking through a different lens. So your experience is different. So our beliefs create our experiences, and our experiences create our beliefs. It's this kind of round robin effect. So
Okay.
that's what we do.
Right. So your approach is multidimensional. Could you elaborate on how you integrate various dimensions into your healing work?
Sure. So first of all, most people think of beliefs as a mental construct. Like I believe in more government, or I believe in less government, or I believe in Santa Claus, or I don't believe in Santa Claus. Those are mental ideas. And when you work with a mental belief, you're really just operating on one dimension of our human personhood. That's the mental part. But what about the emotional part? What about the spiritual part? What about the physical part? What about the energetic part? What about the social and relational part? So we have all these dimensions of our life where right now we're seeing and feeling and hearing and tasting and touching in our experience. So it's already at least 5 dimensions at once. We're not paying attention to all of them. If I ask you to pay attention to your left elbow, you can feel your left elbow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we have this ability to attend to anything, but that information's been coming in all this time, even though you're not attending to it. And so all this information is multidimensional. Our experience is multidimensional. And we're also social beings. So we're interacting with other people all the time through these belief filters and coming to conclusions and learnings and coming up with ideas about people. And so that's what I mean by multidimensional. We're multidimensional creatures. We operate in many dimensions at once. Our attention's mostly focused on one. Like right now, I'm thinking about you, and I'm thinking about the listening audience, and I'm speaking from my experience. But if I put my attention wider, which is what happened to me when I was shot, the attention got very wide. I recognize, oh, I'm in a room, I'm in a house, I'm in a city, I'm in a country, I'm on planet Earth, I'm in the cosmos, I'm made of the cosmos. So how many dimensions can you hold at once? And our processes are multidimensional because when we come to a belief, that belief is a multidimensional construct. It has aspects in all of those dimensions. It's not just a mental idea. Like I'm bad, so I should get beaten. If you get beaten often enough, as a kid, you have to figure out why this is happening, and so you make up something about yourself. I must be a really bad person. Unfortunately, a child's mind isn't able to look and say, "Wow, mom and dad are really screwed up. They should have gotten some therapy a long time ago, and they should have been in marriage counseling way before they had me as a child. They are terrible parents. Children can't do that, but they can figure out what's wrong with them. So there's something wrong with me, or I'm a bad person. Those are quite common, what we call self-esteem beliefs, but they were conclusions from a series of experiences. So we're able to work with trauma and clear it from the past. We can work with childhood wounds and those kinds of very early conclusions that get in people's way.
So you've also authored several books, including Creating on Purpose and Clearing your clients' limiting beliefs. What message did you aim to convey through your writing?
Well, each book is different. Creating on Purpose is about manifestation. How do you bring an idea, which is kind of up here in the netherworlds and the idea place, wherever ideas land, and we bring it down through our body and ground it in the world. So let's say I have an idea for a book. Well, that's an idea up here, but then I have to visualize it and see it clearly. Then I have to find my voice and begin to speak it clearly. Then I have to get into relationship with publishers and PR agents. And then I have to move the world. I actually have to create something physically. So I have to type on a computer to generate a piece of paper with the writing on it, right? But then I have to have enough passion to move it forward and keep going, because it gets hard. Blocks come up, barriers come up, resistance comes up. But then if I take step by step movement, one day, every day, I write a few pages, I will eventually manifest this idea that I had in the world. So a lot of people get lost in this law of attraction bullshit, if you don't mind my saying, where it's like, all I have to do is think of it and it will happen. No.
Well, no, you have to put action behind it. It's just
Exactly.
you can't
Exactly.
just you can't just think it and it pops up and it happens. No, that action has to be put behind it. That's what people. If you really follow it, you understand that there is action behind the Lord. You just don't think it and it manifests. You actually have to put the action behind it in order to make it happen.
Right, right. So that book, Creating on Purpose, is about that process, and it's sort of a workbook. So what's your idea? Where do you want to go with it? How do you visualize it? We just take people step by step through that process
Yes.
to learn how to manifest what they want. And I used to teach that workshop in person around the world, and people would come up with miracles. One woman said, I want to buy a house. I want to have my own house, but I don't have any money for a down payment, and my credit's crappy. And we said, well, do the process. And 3 months later, she called and she said, I bought my house. I got it for no money down, and I made the income so I can pay for it. Thank you for the miracle. I went, hey, you did it. She created it. So miracles are possible. You just have to follow the formula. So that's what that book is about. I have two books with the words clear and beliefs in it. One's called Clear Your Beliefs. And that's an introduction to this whole idea of how these are how beliefs are formed. This is where they come from. This is a way to clear them. And I have a program that I sell that's associated with that book. And then I have Clear Your Clients' Limiting Beliefs, because once I started teaching this methodology to other people, people were attracted to it, who were therapists, healers, consultants, coaches. And so that book is dedicated to them as an agent of change and transformation, telling them about beliefs and how they can learn how to clear their clients' limiting beliefs.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. It's been so okay. So like you see, like we said, we're talking about your journey involves consciousness exploration. How does this exploration influence your personal growth and your approach to coaching and healing?
For me, everything begins in awareness.
Okay.
Like, if without awareness, we don't really have anything else. And if you want to heal yourself, it starts with self-awareness. And it starts with understanding where you came from, what happened to you, what you concluded from what happened to you. And so for me, consciousness is the essence of who we are as beings. Some people think that it's caused by the brain, like the brain causes consciousness. I don't think that's true. I think our brain is like a receiver of consciousness, like a radio receiver that you can tune, to different stations, because the waves with information are all out there. And I
Mm,
think consciousness is all out there. It's part of everything. And we can learn to tune it. We can learn to fine tune it and tap into other consciousnesses. And when we're trying to be in a relationship with someone, we are trying to be in a world with another person who's completely different. And it's not easy because, it's like life is easy until somebody else walks in the room. Then it gets really complicated. And so consciousness expansion means that you're aware of more and more things. You're aware of your own history. You're aware of history for civilization, because we're part of that too. You're aware of religions, not just your own but others as well, so you can find your own way through that. You're aware of philosophy of life, and you're aware of other people's as human beings as similar to you, not that different than you, but different enough that it's problematic. And how do we get along with each other when we don't agree on everything? So that's part of politics. And then we're financial beings, so you got to be aware of the financial world, so you can make your way in this world. So that's what I mean by consciousness expansion. We become more and more aware of more and more, and as we expand, we have more capabilities. We have more ability to create in the world, to create what we want, and to create the world we want by changing it.
okay. Oh man, uh, this has been great, man. This has been a great conversation. You have an amazing story. I'm still in shock. Like I'm still thinking about, man, I would have pressed charges.
I
Like,
understand. I've given this talk to prisoners at San Quentin prison
yeah,
quite a few times, and they all ask the same question after I tell them the story. Didn't you kill the guy? Wouldn't you want to kill him? And I kept saying, no, I didn't. I didn't want to kill him. And they all thought I was weird also. But they all they all disagreed with my method of handling it. But on the other hand, they're in prison probably because they reacted a
that
different
way. Yeah.
way, right? So it's a choice. It's always a choice.
You're right. You're right. It's and I guess with all that time you spent with him and the conversation you had with him and you being aware of self and knowing and just at that moment knowing that this was the right thing to do. I can see why you did it. I can understand and see why you did it, especially in that moment, knowing that, listen, it happened. I'm still alive. Do I really want to take away this man's life by putting him back in prison? Or do I want to afford him that second opportunity to see the error of his ways and hopefully this man has turned his life around and experience. So I can see why you did it. I understand why you did it. And it was if I sit down and think, maybe I would have probably went the same route. At that moment, you never know. But I could truly understand why you did it. And have you ever thought about looking finding this man, or you think he ever reached out to you, or
I'm often asked that question. The answer is no. We've never had contact since then. My story has been published many ways in books and magazines and uh, blogs and things. And there was a movie made based on my story. And if you go on my website, liongoodman.com, and you read the story called Lion's Near Death Experience, at the very bottom, you'll get to watch the 20-minute short film that was based on my story, which is quite a good film, and it won Best Film at a film festival. So it's been out there, but the likelihood of him seeing one of those things is pretty low. And if he showed up at my door and said, "Hey, I'm here. I'm the guy that shot you," I'd go, "Come on in for a cup of tea. Let's catch up. Let's find out what's happening." Unless he had a gun in his hand, which would be a
yes?
different situation.
Well, I would have to have him search before he entered my house. Like, dude, you got any guns on you? You got to make sure you leave them in the car, man. You can't. Yeah. not here today.
Yeah. I mean, just because you're enlightened doesn't mean you don't have sense. You have
Yes,
to use
no.
common
Like if
sense.
you coming into the house, you come in like you have to strip before you enter my house, and I have to make sure there's no weapons on you.
Right.
But Lion, has been a pleasure and honor speaking to you. Now is the time where you get the solo screen, you get to promote, plug everything, where they can find you, where they can get the book, everything.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. So, if you'd like to learn more about me and what I do, go to liongoodman.com. That's LionGoodman. That will link you to my many activities and my resources. There's a lot of great articles on that website, as well as my free ebook. And so that will link to others. If you're interested in my training, if you're a practitioner of any kind, a healer, a therapist, or coach, go to clearbeliefs.com and learn about my training. And those two websites will get you all over the internet. I suffer from multiple website disorder. So rather than give you too many things, I'll just give you those two, and those will lead to everywhere else. I do free programs every month to explore your beliefs. And to sign up for that, you can go to beliefrelief.net. That's beliefrelief.net. So that's enough. And I look forward to seeing you at some point down the road.
Awesome, awesome. Again, thank you for being a guest. I greatly appreciate it. Um, Listen, anytime you want to come back and chat, man, we could definitely have you back on. And if you got any, when you have anything, new programs, anything, hit me up, and we definitely have you back on. It's great having you on. But I'm gonna close out the show with my shout outs. So don't leave just yet. With me and you chat a little bit off the air again.
Great.
And thank you, man. Thank you. I greatly appreciate this. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
Oh, pleasure's all mine, believe it. All right. So let's close this show out. Thank you for everybody in the chat that showed up. I don't know who you are, Facebook user. I appreciate you though. Jude, what's going on, my brother? Looking forward to me and you collaborating soon. Tony, man, how's it going, brother? Thank you for stopping by. Greatly appreciated it. Enjoy your vacation. Always coming through and showing love. I greatly appreciate it. Shout out to my Real Wise fam, Poppy J, Brandy J. Love you guys. Shout out to everybody at the BS3 network. Check us out there every Monday through Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central Time. Check us out on Real Wise TV as well. Big shout out to everybody out there again who stopped by and showed some love. Greatly appreciate it. And as always, a big shout out to all the essential workers out there. God bless you. Be safe. Now your boy Wise does it. Peace out.